and friends. Thank you very much for coming, especially the ones that had some trip to come and to join us today in one or other Europeans in Catalonia event. So Europeans in Catalonia is a pro-European association founded to give visibility to the rights and interests of EU citizens living in Catalonia. We promote pro-European values, inform about Europe, and we defend the right to vote of EU citizens regardless of their nationality and place of residence. Our mission is to spread the values and benefits of belonging to the European Union, deepen the idea of European citizenship, and promote cohesion among European citizens from their diversity and the full exercise of their rights. Our main activities of our association are to disseminate information about the EU and its institutions, to represent and address the concerns of European citizens living in Catalonia at a local, regional, national or European level, broadcast a weekly radio program in English at Radio Cultura. It's FM 101.8. Today we recorded a couple of programs about the same topic we are having here today. Organize events related to the EU and to Europe. One is, of course, the one we are today all together, and conduct campaigns to help citizens to register to vote. We left you some flyer with information that we did to help foreigners, EU citizens and not only, also other nationalities, to vote in the last elections. And we invite you all to know us better on the social networks, on our website, and participate in our events, and if you want also to join our association and defend the rights we try to defend. On October 26th, we have our next event. We will be in a stand in the Barcelona International Community Day, organized by the Barcelona Town Hall. You can see us there, you can meet us there, and we hope you can go. You have to register, it's for free, at the website they have for the event, and then it's in Drassanas, in the center of Barcelona. Last but not least, we would like to thank the kind support of our sponsors, especially today Barcelona Princess Hotel and AV Services. They have provided us the possibility of doing this event here, and also the generosity of Legal City, some lawyers for expats, and Kingsbrook Idiomas, some language school in Barcelona, that also help us to sponsor the events we do. One more important thing before I go to the topic. In Europeans in Catalonia, we are all volunteers. We would be very grateful for any donations that would help us to carry on this kind of events. Those could be done in the box at the end of the event, in PayPal, or directly on our account. We have information in our website if you want to see it. All our funds come from the membership. It's a small amount of money we have as a membership, year membership, and the volunteer donations. Okay, what we are doing today has been mostly paid also by our members and of course by the sponsors we have. Thank you very much for attending our event, and now I will just make a small introduction of our guests, and then I will give them the word. It's the important thing we have to do today. So what brought us here today is Brexit, the impact on EU and British citizens. On the media, we are broadly informed about the economics and the politics of Brexit, but we seldom hear about what the citizens are going through. To talk about the rights and the human side of Brexit, we are pleased to have first Hedwig Echtermans. She's a member of the 3 Million. It's the biggest group lobbying and campaigning for the rights of all EU citizens in the UK. Then Elena Remici, founder and director of In Limbo Book and Project. It's a compilation of testimonies and documents to understand the harrowing human cost of Brexit. Then we have Debbie Williams, founder of Brexpats Hear Our Voice group. It's a British citizens all over Europe campaigning to keep their European identity. This group was awarded with the European Citizens Prize in 2017 for representing the values of the EU and the cross-border collaboration. And later, the last opponent is Sue Wilson. She's chair of Remain in Spain, is the biggest group for British citizens fighting Brexit from Spain. So now I will give them the word. Let's hear what they have to explain us. Later you will have the opportunity of putting questions. We would expect those questions to be as brief as possible because we would like to give the opportunity to speak to as many people as possible. Okay? So thank you very much for coming, and now we start. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. So my name is Hedwig, and thank you all for coming, and thank you for Europeans in Catalonia for organizing this event and giving all of us the opportunity to come and speak. So indeed, my name is Hedwig. I'm a Dutch citizen, and I'm living in the UK since 2001. And since beginning 2017, I have been an active member and lobbyist of the 3 Million. The 3 Million is the largest grassroots group campaigning for retaining our rights as we had before the referendum. So, Vote Leave promised us, and everybody is there in front of their bus, that for us there would be no change. We would automatically be granted status, and we would be treated no less favorably than before Brexit. And also Michel Barnier from the EU side stated that the citizens' rights would be the highest priority during the negotiations. And he said so that to both representatives of the 3 Million as well as British in Europe when they met with him in March 2017. So our campaign and lobby basically is to retain our existing rights after Brexit. No more, no less, and as was promised by all sides. And we do this by lobbying in Brussels, both in Brussels and Westminster, together with the British in Europe. There will be no divide and rule between our groups. And we will lobby in political parties. In the UK, we talk to MPs, we talk at fringe events, at party conferences. We're speaking at hearings at the European Parliament, and we're giving evidence at select committees in Westminster. And we lobby as much as possible all EU 27 member states. So, our current rights are based on the EU freedom of movement rights. So we all, as many of you, we all moved into different countries within the EU based on the freedom of movement. However, when the UK leaves, these rights will cease to exist. And we in the UK, as EU citizens, need new post-Brexit immigration status under the UK immigration law. And what they come up with for us is called settled status. However, it's actually more an unsettling status because it's less rights than we have now. And in case of a no-deal Brexit, which is looming again in a few weeks' time, these rights will be hollowed out even more. We are worried that many people will fall between the cracks. Think, for example, children who are depending on their parents to apply for them for settled status. People in care, for example. It is an application system, not a registration system, which is an important difference, and I will come back to that later. Settled status falls under secondary legislation, or the so-called Henry VIII powers, which basically means that any future or current Home Secretary can change the rules without parliamentary scrutiny. The other thing important is, in the UK, there is no citizens registration anyway. For me as a Dutch person, that was really bizarre, because in the Netherlands, everybody is registered, and if you move from Amsterdam to Maastricht, or from Maastricht to Leeuwarden, you just say to your council, okay, I'm moving out, and your new council are moving in. So when I came to the UK, I said, where do I register? Nowhere. So we also don't have an ID card. That is another important thing to mention. So at the moment, yeah, you cannot register. But now, of course, we have to prove that we are already legally in the UK. So that is a problem. Do we have settled status later? We will only get an electronic proof. There will be no card to prove. I will come to that later as well. Then there's a difference between settled and pre-settled status, depending on how long an EU citizen is already living in the UK. However, a lot of people already end up with the wrong status, and that is very risky, because pre-settled status has less rights and is very easy to lose. So, as a 3 million, we basically have 4 main goals. Our rights should be proved by international treaty. Our rights should be granted automatically. Remember, that was promised. We need physical documentation to prove that we have a right to live and work in the UK. And we must keep our voting rights, that will return a few times, I think. Voting rights is very important. So, international treaty. We knew immediately after talking with Michel Barnier, who said that it was clear that nothing is agreed until everything is agreed. However, that means in case of a no deal, the withdrawal agreement will go in the dustbin together with everything that has been agreed with the citizens' rights. So we simply ask that guarantee us citizens' rights, no matter of the outcome, whatever happens to Brexit. I also understand that there are bilateral agreements being done. For example, I think in El País last week was an article between arrangements between Spain and the UK on citizens' rights, but that is simply not good enough. All those, you can imagine 27 different little agreements, because we need cooperation. So we need an agreement in an international treaty between the EU as a whole and the UK. Because, for example, if you think, I have a friend who lived in Netherlands, Belgium, France, then the UK, working in all those countries, accumulating pension rights in those countries. So it is very important that this keeps to be arranged as an EU whole. Accessing healthcare is another example. So we need a single international treaty to ensure that citizens on both sides of the channel are treated equally and fairly. These rights are more secure because then in an international treaty, none of the 28 countries can tinker and try to affect and get this, degrade those laws. Another important thing is this has to be done before Brexit, because it is legally it's basically not possible to do afterwards. So this is the only way to protect millions of citizens and their families on both sides of the channel, and to give us the legal protection in all 28 countries. Remember this promise? So automatically, we in the UK as EU citizens were promised to remain, that we would be automatically granted status. However, the UK government is making us apply to stay in our own homes. But think of it, what happens then after the deadline, which at the moment is 31st of December 2020, if there is no deal? After that, people who, for whatever reason, have not applied will not have a legal basis to stay in the UK. So think for one moment what that means. So they will face the hostile attitudes by the Home Office and even face possible removal from the country. We will need to prove that we can live, work, rent, access healthcare. That is great, however, no application scheme in the world ever has reached 100% target. So there will be cracks and people will fall in between those cracks. So we already, since 2017, say the solution is turn the settled status system from application into a registration system. We have no problem with registration, and we register then simply to get proof of our status. it's a bit like your passport. You have a passport, but you're still a British or Spanish citizen, even if you don't have the passport. And that is what we want with the settled status. So the other problem is, once we have settled status, we will not get a physical proof. And we will be the only immigrant group not having a card or a stamp in our passport. So at the moment, it's no problem. We can rent, we can get a job with our European passport. But obviously, after Brexit, that would not be possible anymore. So if we get settled, when we get settled status, we have a so-called digital-only status, which the Home Office claims is very simple and safe. However, I will not go through it, but you can see if I would want to work for this company, this is what we need to, me and the prospective employer would need to go through. It's really not that simple. Plus, of course, we all know online systems, they can be temporarily offline. Online systems can and are frequently hacked. And so it is already clear that a lack of physical documents is leading to discrimination. Last but not least, definitely, let us vote. The threat to voting rights is one of the most undemocratic and shameful aspects of Brexit. Almost all EU citizens, and many in the UK, and many UK citizens in the EU, could not vote in the most important referendum of their life. It's very painful. I could not vote over my future, but the Australian summer student could. I mean, it just did not make any sense. So we, at the moment, can vote or stand as a candidate at local and municipal and European parliamentary elections. The UK government offers no firm guarantees that local election voting rights will continue after Brexit. I think there is an agreement with Spain and Portugal, I'm not really sure, but anyway, it's not guaranteed for all of us. Not all EU citizens will be able to keep even their voting rights in the European Parliament after Brexit, because that depends on the franchise in their home country. So possibly after Brexit, there will be totally disenfranchising of a large part of legal residents in the UK. So we are campaigning that for the UK government to confirm that no one will be deleted from the electoral roll as a result of Brexit. And we also believe a debate is needed on how decisions are made that affect everyone in the UK. We support the extension of the vote in general elections to all UK residents and UK citizens living abroad to make the UK election system fairer. Thank you very much.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Elena, I'm from Milan, and I have lived in the UK for over 14 years with my husband and son. I'm very pleased to be here tonight, and before I start, I would like to thank Mamen and the Europeans in Catalonia for the very kind invitation. Muchas gracias, moltes gracias. I've been asked to speak about the human cost of Brexit. So to start with, in March 2017, I opened a Facebook group and I started a project called In Limbo, which resulted in the publications of 2 books, not-for-profit books, of testimonies called In Limbo and In Limbo 2. The first book is about EU27 citizens in the UK, and it's edited with my French friend Véronique, whose sister's here tonight. Bonsoir. And she lives in Barcelona. And the second one is a collaboration between our group in Limbo and Breakfast Here Our Voice with Debbie Williams. So the aim of these two books is to show the human side and the human cost of Brexit, which in my opinion has been largely underestimated. So the idea of In Limbo stems from my own personal experience when I applied to become a British citizen. I had to send kilos after kilos of documents just to prove that I had been living in Britain, because the Home Office just didn't believe it. And this on top of the documents already requested. It was it was a Kafkaesque process, but this experience opened my eyes to the plight of thousands of others. But there are even more important reasons. The first is that EU citizens in the UK, as well as Brits living abroad for more than 15 years, were denied a vote in the referendum. We had no voice. And some of you here, I think, have had the experience. We saw this drama unfolding and couldn't do much. Second, as Hedwig said, we were promised that nothing would change, and instead we become bargaining chips for the British government in order to get a better deal. And our lives have been plunged into a state of prolonged and horrible uncertainty. So this is why I thought that by putting our stories together, they could finally be heard. They could become a much stronger collective voice. I also wanted to inform both politicians and the British public of our distress, of our anguish, and bring them to ask themselves, what can we do? Is Brexit really worth it? So I'm pleased to say that the books have been sent now to over 1,500 politicians and political figures, and on both sides of the channel. As for the public who's read the books, I must confess that every time I feel low, somebody writes and tells me, I gave In Limbo to my mom, she read it and she said she's changed her mind over Brexit. And I feel instantly repaid of all the work. So the first book contains stories of ordinary citizens who have been living in the UK, at times for decades, often are married to British citizens with British children or grandchildren. After the referendum, many of them had started feeling unwelcome, worried, betrayed, and are left wondering, where is home? Where is home now? Alicia, a Polish girl of 12, writes, before the referendum, nobody ever asked me, when are you going back to Poland? Now I hear it all the time. I was born in England and never lived anywhere else. Susie from Germany writes, feeling in limbo is like not knowing where home is anymore, where to feel safe. Another, home is where you're made to feel welcome. No document can replace this. And speaking of documents, Ellie, a Dutch widow, 77, writes, I haven't had a good night's sleep since the referendum. Why? Because many elderly people are deeply worried about having the right documents to prove that they lived in the UK. As Edwin explained, we've got to prove our right to stay. An Italian lady who moved to London after the war, now aged 90 and suffering from dementia, applied for settled status, was refused and asked to submit more documents. Luckily, her son-in-law helped her, to get through to this, this thing. Imagine if this woman were alone. Imagine how many are in her situation. Imagine having lived in a country for 40, 50 years lawfully, and some of these women were even invited by the British government in the 50s to come and walk after the war in the UK. And now being told, you need to ask if you can stay. Imagine the victims of domestic abuse, like Monique. Many of them would like to run away from their abusive husbands, but need the documents to do settled status, so they're trapped. Imagine how many children, particularly those in care, will be left out. How many parents will fail to apply for them, because many truly don't know. Speaking of children, an Anglo-German girl of 7 last year wrote a very touching letter to Santa. Dear Santa, for Christmas, I would like my mum to be allowed to stay in England, because I don't want to lose my friends and family. In France, on the other side of the channel, a British boy, Adam, writes, "Nana is getting quite old. She could never manage having to move to the UK if we had to return there. It would kill her." So children are affected too by this climate. They worry about their families, they worry about their parents. How can this be fair? The Polish girl of 12 I was speaking about before was asked to go back home. Countless EU citizens have been asked that. Polish and Eastern European communities or EU citizens living in strong-lit areas have often been badly targeted. Joanne from Barcelona says, "My children are afraid of speaking Spanish when they leave home. Many others tell us they are afraid of speaking their mother tongue in public." Hannah, a British woman, was in a supermarket with her Romanian husband. This, forgive me the language, but this is what she wrote. The husband was tapped on the shoulder and told, "Fuck off back to your country. We don't want your sort here. We voted to get all you fucking foreigners out." And then to her, "You had children with this man? People like you need putting down." So this family left Britain, and now it's Hannah's rights who are at stake. The atmosphere has sadly changed in Britain. Was this there before? Possibly, and it's not only a British problem, I'd like to point out, but Brexit has validated certain racist attitudes, has allowed certain xenophobic and racist rhetoric to thrive. I know it's difficult to speak of these topics, but I think we need to speak about them, and they're uncomfortable truths, but we need to speak if we want to move forward. As a response, I must say, many wonderful British people have been very supportive. They tell us they're ashamed. We are very grateful, but we tell them, turn your shame into action. Fight for our rights, for your rights, because Brexit will take them away. It will take away your freedom of movement, the same freedom of movement which has allowed us to travel, to marry, to have healthcare in 28 countries. And going back to the UK, EU citizens, as Edwig was pointing out before, are increasingly encountering difficulties in renting, opening bank accounts, in obtaining a mortgage, and it's only going to get worse. So this uncertainty about our rights and the fear of a no-deal scenario is resulting in more and more people either struggling or deciding to leave. Many EU citizens in the UK and Brits abroad have fallen into depression or suffer from panic attacks. For instance, Julian, a British in France, writes, "Brexit has devastated my business and livelihood." And another one writes, "Not everyone copes well with the fear of the unknown, and people are pushed to the limit." How can people not be anxious? At one point last year, we didn't count the number of people in our group to whom we had to suggest to go to the doctor or seek psychological help. This is how serious this is. Others, as I was saying, have instead decided to leave. Brexit is very, very real, and we see it happening in our group all the time. Mamen here is an example. She returned to live here, to Spain. Pia from Germany wrote, "Goodbye, Britain. You were once good to me, and then you were not." Stefan from Germany writes, "In the past year, I learned that I'm a citizen of nowhere. I'm now called a migrant, not an EU citizen. I have to prove that I have a right to stay in my own home. Even with settled status, I can lose that right again. I will no longer be able to vote in local elections. Many friends were never actually friends. I no longer belong." So Stefan left. It's really heartbreaking to see so many professionals, academics, doctors, nurses, and ordinary citizens leave. So to conclude, as in Limbo, we will continue to raise awareness and to collect evidence of problems with settled status and testimonies from our British friends who are our mirror image and have been totally abandoned by this government, and this makes me so angry. We need to hold this government to account and document everything. We need to speak up. If we don't, nobody will do it for us. My hope is that our work will keep highlighting the human cost of Brexit in terms of suffering and in terms of loss of human rights. One very last thing. I would like now to draw your attention to the two covers of In Limbo and In Limbo 2, put next to each other. Together they represent, you see, a man and a woman, they represent a family, our European family, which is at risk of being torn asunder. The poet Dante, who inspired the cover and the title of the books, writes, "Nel mezzo del cammin di nostra vita mi ritrovai per una selva oscura che la diritta via era smarrita." In the middle of my life, I found myself in a dark forest, for I had lost the straightforward path. This is our limbo. But Dante's Inferno, I always like to remind people, ends with a verse, "E quindi uscimmo a riveder le stelle." Hence we came forth to re-behold the stars. Is there hope? Yes, always. But our rights are always a compass too, and should never be taken for granted. Thank you very much for listening.
I've been told I don't need a microphone. Hello, I'm Debbie Williams, and I've got a lot to get through, but don't worry, it's in big print. Thank you, Europeans in Catalonia, so much for having us here. Thank you, ladies, my fellow girly swats. And in joke, did you get it? Okay, so don't worry, it's not too long. Elena has so eloquently described what the In Limbo project is all about. When we were asked to collaborate on In Limbo 2, little did we know that this collaboration would turn into not only a labour of love, but also a project that encapsulates the spirit of the European Union. Simply put, friendship and love have developed between the two groups, EU citizens in the UK and UK citizens living in the EU. We are in effect one, and all the project does, everything we've done transcends nationalities and borders, quite simply. It is a model of cooperation that we are very proud of, and a lot of other people should aspire to, especially in Westminster. The testimonies in the two books are moving, sad and reflective in equal measure. All credit to Elena and the team for creating this most relevant of projects. I'm sorry about my hair, I cut today. The books will always be with us, an honest and moving account of these times, telling the truth, because that's what it is, the human cost of Brexit, the stories of immigration, told by real people in their own voices.